Thanks again to our reps for tuning in. We have another great episode for you today with Noah Jesko and Zeb Gray with Diamond V.
Hey, thank you guys for listening. We're excited to bring this Zeb on with us today. He's going to talk about two different products. Um, One of the products that's in our Nature Safe high stress tub, that's really good for incoming cattle or any type of stressful event. And then, like we've talked about in the past, our 30% protein tub that's designed for our cow-calf pairs. So, Zeb, can you kind of give a background to who you are, what you do, and who you work for?
You bet. Great to be with you, Noah. So I am an Iowa native and currently live in Iowa, and I work for a company called Diamond V. Um, if you've not heard of Diamond V before, we are a ingredient manufacturer, and commonly we get called Diamond V Yeast. That's probably the lingo that most producers would use in the country. But we've been around, we've been in the business for quite some time, coming up on 85 years. We've Our manufacturing capacity has always been based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is kind of eastern 1/3 of Iowa. And there's some reasons why that is, but um, I am a beef enthusiast. I grew up on a Angus cattle farm, and went to Iowa State University, went on to, I did my PhD at the University of Wyoming, and coming up next month, I'll have been at Diamond V for 5 years, and I think pretty much that whole time I've worked with Nutrition Plus, and I've really got to enjoy getting to know the crew. So glad to be here
Yes,
this
sir.
morning.
Yes, sir. Can you tell us kind of, you mentioned why y'all were in Iowa just briefly. There's a reason for it. Can you tell us how y'all got started, why you are in Iowa? I just like our sales reps to understand that a lot of the companies that we're working with are guys or companies that are just like us. So can you kind of explain that?
You bet. So the founder was a dairyman. And one of the things that's unique about Cedar Rapids is it is really, maybe arguably the grain processing hub of America. Obviously being in Iowa, there is a lot of grain, corn and beans that are produced here, and the surrounding states. But if you look at a map and where rivers flow, Cedar Rapids has just over the decades been a hub of grain processing. And the founder of Diamond V, he was a dairyman. And so one of the things that he did is he would feed some byproducts from the grain processing industry to his cows. And of particular note, one of the things he saw, one of the things he fed, he saw this benefit in health, in milk production. And so that started him down this process of, you know, what particular grain byproducts could he feed to improve production? Now, obviously, 85 years ago, it was a lot of just feed it, observe it, did it work, and certainly not on any large scale. I mean, if you think about the average dairy producer at that time, probably 10 cows was a big cow herd. So we have certainly undergone, big changes over the course of the last 85 years, as all production agriculture has done. But the reason we were based out of Iowa or where our manufacturing is located, is one, our founder lived there, and two, if you look at all the grain processing that is done in that area, it just makes really good sense. It fits our production capacity extremely well to take advantage of some of the byproducts in our manufacturing process ourselves. And you know, just a side note, like I think that there's only one time in our history where we actually were down in production, and that was in 2008 when Cedar Rapids experienced some catastrophic drought,
Mhm.
catastrophic flooding, and actually our plant flooded, and that started. We built a new plant after that, a little bit south of town, away from the river, but that was the only time in our history we've had an interruption in production was because of that flood. So kind of a blessing in disguise, really. But yeah, to your question, why Cedar Rapids? Um, you know, like a lot of producers, because that's where you started, that's where you
Yes,
grew
sir.
up. And, because of the industry around there, it's just really allowed us to take advantage of some of them things.
Yes, sir. So quite a evolution from just grain processing to some of the products that y'all are producing and that we're using now. Uh, and I'd like you to describe those two products, the nature safe product that goes into the high stress tub, and then just the regular Diamond V XPC that we put into our ultra tub.
You bet. So I'm going to start at a real high level. Um, if you're in the country and you're fielding questions from customers, what I would throw out there is, some of the most common questions is this a yeast? Is this a a direct fed microbial? Is this a probiotic, right? Is this a prebiotic? All those things. And so if you've not heard of Diamond V, or if a customer's not heard of Diamond V, commonly, if Diamond V comes up in conversation, frequently we just get called Diamond V, and that's okay. We'll take that. But to your question about what our products are, we don't actually sell a yeast. We use a yeast at our plant as a microbial engine to generate a fermentation that we control and manipulate so that that yeast and that fermentation produce specific products, specific metabolites that when fed to livestock or when taken by people result in better health. Okay. So as you think about Nature Safe or XPC, the product you use, XPC Ultra, we can get into those details. But what Diamond V is, it's a yeast fermentation product, and the way that those XPC or Nature Safe plays out, it's because of the way we manipulate the fermentation at our plant to get varying end products. Okay. So XPC has been around in some version for a long time, and the hallmarks of that are improved gut health. I mean, if you think of nothing else, think XPC gut health. Now, the way that plays out in a cow is largely a result of increasing the microbe populations of that rumen. So as ranchers, as cattlemen, we think about feeding the cattle, because that's what we have to do. We have to haul feed or supply pasture, supply forages. But really what we're feeding is those microbe bugs, because the rumen is its own fermentation plant. Just like we have a fermentation plant that produces our product, cows have a rumen that produce that's a fermentation plant that also produce their own products, and that the cow is able to take advantage of, right? So with XPC, when fed to cows, we see an increase in those micro populations that digest forage, that drive feed intake, that help get more energy out of particular feedstuffs, right? And so that's why we're utilizing XPC in that 30% tub that you mentioned,
Yes, sir.
uh, because it's all about it's all about gut health and nutrient digestion, right? And we know intuitively, we might not think about this all the time, but we know intuitively, if a cow is in poor body condition, her chances of getting rebred or having a next calf go down dramatically. So it's all about gut health and driving nutrient availability.
So you mentioned that it's not a prebiotic, it's not a yeast. What term could our guys, if they ask, hey, what is this Diamond V? What would they tell the producer? Like,
Great question. And I mean, what I would offer is the last thing you want to do is confuse somebody. So I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. And I'm going to break it into three categories: prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic. The best way to think about a prebiotic is it's essentially a digestible fiber that you feed to the animal to essentially feed the microbes in the rumen. Okay. So prebiotic is a digestible fiber to feed the bugs, hopefully get more bugs. A probiotic is a guaranteed concentration of live bugs. So you actually feed live bugs to the cow,
Mhm.
and your hope is that those live bugs stay alive to get to the spot in the gut where they can actually, uh,
Accomplish something.
yeah, provide a benefit, right? A postbiotic is basically it's an inanimate product that you feed to a cow for health benefits. That's the official definition. Now, a postbiotic is relatively a new thing. So forever we just had prebiotic and we had probiotic, and largely Diamond V kind of fell into that prebiotic category. But we are clearly a postbiotic, meaning as a result of our fermentation, we have those
Hmm.
metabolites that, when fed to cattle, increase not only bugs but also improve the gut quality, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that would be the simplest one. Prebiotic, digestible fiber for the bugs. Probiotic, guaranteed concentration of the bugs. And postbiotic, the best way to think about it, it's all the goodies that you're hoping to accomplish with a probiotic and prebiotic already done, and are just stable and get delivered to the gut.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's the best way, I think, in the country to kind of think about those things.
Okay. So can you tell us about the specific increase in immune health in that animal by feeding the rumen? Because that's what
So
we're thinking about. We're not feeding the cow, we're feeding the rumen. And
right,
how does feeding the rumen Diamond V help with immune function?
you bet. So I'm gonna break that into two things. Let's talk about XPC first. I'll go back to our founder, right? He fed this grain byproduct that had a lot of yeast byproduct in it, okay, as a
Yes,
result of the
sir.
grain industry. And he saw better milk production from his dairy cows and better health, right? When you think about rumen nutrition, the most fundamental thing that exists is this concept we call energy over maintenance, meaning that every day a cow has a maintenance requirement that has to be fed first. There's a hierarchy of priority where energy gets partitioned to. And so every day you got to meet the maintenance requirement first. And then whatever is available left above and beyond that is what's available for growth and milking ability and reproduction, right? So when we think about immunity, the first thing, that the most basic thing, is if a cow is in an energy deficient state, her immunity is going to be compromised, right? Because that
Sir.
maintenance requirement is not being met. So that's step number one. And gut health, increased rumen microbes, all that to drive more digestibility out of feedstuffs is paramount, right? But let's talk about NatureSafe. So NatureSafe is a product that's really not been around super long. That it's been on the market since about 2017 or 18, so coming up 8 years, call it. And NatureSafe builds upon XPC, and it still drives rumen health. It increases micropopulations. It increases digestibility, right? But it has additional metabolites that actually impact the innate immune system. And the innate immune system of an animal, of a person, that's the first responders of an immune challenge. Meaning, when it's innate, if there's a challenge, it shows up and takes care of it regardless of, it's not specific, right? It's
Yes,
very
sir.
general. And through our research, over the last 15 years now on those immune type of products, we've been able to document that when cattle are fed NatureSafe, that we see a host of different benefits in immunity, from less cortisol production, just less time to recovery, quicker response to that immune challenge, right?
Hey,
So
Zed, real quick,
yes,
on
sir.
the cortisol response, can you explain to our guys why that is important?
So cortisol is, anytime you're experiencing an increase in cortisol. Well, I'm going to back up a second. What I just said about the energy requirement, or that maintenance over or energy over maintenance concept. When the immune system is activated, and that's largely driven by cortisol, the cow experiences a huge uptake, a huge increase in energy consumption, right? And
Yes,
so
sir.
anytime we cattle experience an increase in cortisol, an increase in stress, that immune system becomes activated, and all of a sudden that becomes an energy sink, where all of a sudden she needs that much more energy to just maintain herself, right?
Yes, sir.
So in the space of looking at immunity, cortisol is usually like, the number one. Uh, it's the easiest factor to measure
Yes, sir.
that we can kind of baseline if a cow or if a steer is undergoing an immune challenge, right?
Yep. So it's some sort of high stress event. Yes, sir.
Right. Yep.
So sorry, whenever I interrupted you, you were talking about the cortisol response and the immune function. So if you could pick up, sorry about that, but I wanted to really point out to those guys that cortisol response is in some sort of stressful challenge, immune function type challenge. So if you just pick up, sorry for the
Yeah.
interruption.
No, you're good. So, um, at a cellular level, like that's what we're measuring. But one of the things we're measuring, but in production, you guys that are listening to this, the way that plays out is if cattle can stay on feed because their immune system is functioning better, not only are they going to have more energy to fuel that immune system response, but they're going to be quicker to recover. And that's, through the research trials we've done, we just see those similar things over and over. We've done challenge studies where we actually apply a respiratory virus to the calf and we measure the response. We've looked at lung tissue as a result of that, whether the cattle were on NatureSafe or not. And it's just quite stark, how in a very short amount of time, Diamond V can really prime the immune system for that calf to have a much better chance to get through it. Because the thing that we can't do, we can't eliminate those challenges, right?
Yes, sir.
We work in an industry where we're dealing with varying weather, varying conditions, varying people management, right? All the things that are so hard to control. We're not going to eliminate immune challenges. That's the industry we live in. And so if we can prime that animal to have a better chance to withstand that and get back to baseline, that's really what we're after.
So I want to talk about the priming of the animal. And since we've been talking about nature safe here for a minute, let's stay in that area. But when would be a ideal time to feed nature safe, in response to these stressful events? You don't want to always be in response to them, but can you kind of talk about that when a producer should introduce nature safe?
Sure. Well, because our industry is segmented, I probably have to talk about the different segments. If you're a cow calf guy and you're going to be shipping calves or maybe weaning calves, ideally we would like to see it, say 30 days prior to that known stressful event, right? I understand that that's not always feasible just because of logistics, but when the event happens, so say on shipping day or when cattle are received into a yard, or on weaning day, if we could get it into them at that point, through a tub or through a supplement, that's the best case scenario. And to that point, one of the questions that often gets asked is, how quickly does NatureSafe work, or how quickly does it stop working if you stop feeding it, right?
Yes, sir.
We've got research to say that once an animal consumes NatureSafe, the response is basically within a couple hours, right? So
Okay.
it really does
Yes,
work
sir.
quite quickly. On the opposite side of that, though, in terms of continuing to prime the immune system, if a producer stops feeding it, that that response seems to go away pretty quickly as well.
Yes, sir.
That does not say that the long-term implications. If a calf say gets NatureSafe for 30 days and they, have a respiratory challenge or something in that time period, and then they go off nature safe, and then in a month they will just completely fall apart. It's just that if there's another respiratory challenge, if there's another immune challenge, and they're not being fed nature safe, um, it's not like there's these long lingering effects.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so, but yeah, if you have a known a stress event coming, earlier the better. If we can get a few days in front of it, that's great. I just know that logistically that's not always
Yes,
feasible.
sir. So
Um,
what we tell a lot of our guys is like in the feed yard or the grow yard setting to whenever those guys are getting cattle in, put nature safe in the pen before those cattle ever get there. So
Absolutely.
that as soon as they walk in, they can hit that tub and it can start immediately. On the other side, on the cow calf, it'd be a little easier to put out some of those tubs before you're going to go wean, and then, but at the same time, uh, if you can get it to them as soon as they are weaned, the faster the better. And like you said, because as soon as they hit it, it starts working.
Right.
So I want to talk now a little bit more about the 30% tub and the XPC that's in that one. So can you tell us like timing of that? Should they be on it all the time? Should they be on it, when you turn bulls out? Can you kind of explain what you think in that aspect?
Sure. Well, as a salesman, I'd say, yeah, have them on it all the time, right?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah. Our sales reps
uh,
would probably say the same thing. Yep.
yeah, right. If it was only that easy.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
so here's the way I go about thinking this is, and this gets more difficult as you deal with more and more customers, right? Because it can be customer specific. What I would say is that if you're working with a producer, that um, generally has good production, they're not facing any overt production challenges. They're happy with conception rate, they're happy with their weaning weight. They're just maybe looking for an insurance policy. That's different than a producer that has those challenge,
Yes, sir.
has known problems, right? And that can vary from year to year as we get into drought years or if we get into wet years. If there's you know, uh, in the Midwest anyway, we deal with mycotoxins, right?
Hmm.
Some years are heavier in mycotoxins, so it can be producer specific, but in general, um, to your 30% tub, you got to look at what is their what does their production of the cow herd look like in terms of feed availability, right? So if they're calving and at a time where forage is lush and there's ample amount of feed, that's a different conversation than if they're calving in the middle of winter where everything is getting hauled to them as stored feed or stored
Yes,
forages,
sir.
right? So my basic approach would be, if I'm looking at my cow herd and they're a little thinner than I would prefer, that 30% tub, in addition to the protein component, right? There's other things in that tub, just diamond V,
Yes, sir.
but that XPC component of that tub will increase gut health. It will increase energy availability. And one of the things that we've been able to document, no, let's talk about protein for a second. So there's really we can fractionate protein a couple different ways. The first two are rumen degradable protein and
Yes,
rumen
sir.
undegradable protein, right? Rumen degradable is the protein that's available to the microbes, and the rumen's going to get broken down there. They're going to use it as part of their life cycle, produce those end products the cow takes advantage of. Rumen undegradable protein is the result of two things. It's protein that's not available in the rumen, so it just passes through and is utilized by the cow in the small intestine. And the second component of rumen undegradable is actually microbial protein. And that is the bugs that make up the rumen. When they complete their life cycle and they die and they flush out of that system to the lower intestine, those dead bugs will actually be used as a source of protein to the cow.
Yes, sir.
And that's what we call microbial protein. And really, that is about as high a quality protein as that cow can ever have. Those bugs are extremely digestible. Well, because XPC increases those rumen microbe populations. We've been able to document, we see a pretty nice increase in microbial protein to cows that are on XPC, right?
Yes, sir.
So not only are you providing additional protein through that tub, but the XPC is not only is adding to that through microbial protein in addition to the energy utilization. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, if a cow herd is maybe thinner, the tub is going to benefit in multiple ways. The Diamond V is going to benefit in multiple ways. And the last thing I'll just bring to your attention is we actually have studies where we looked at if cows went on XPC prior to calving. So the studies looked at 60 days prior to calving. If a cow went on XPC, we saw a pretty substantial bump in the colostrum quality of that cow post calving.
Yes, sir.
And if you don't know why that's important, when a calf is born, it basically is a blank slate of immunity. It has to rely on all the immunity from its mother through that colostrum. And we have a metric that we measure that by. It's called passive transfer. If a calf fails to receive passive transfer because of a lack of colostrum quality, it's about 5 times more likely to die before weaning. So to me, if you're looking at spending a few pennies, XPC prior to calving and through the breeding season makes a lot of sense, especially at what these cattle prices are. Because if we can, we actually, one of the studies that we looked at, like I said, passive transfer, there's what we classified as adequate, partial failure, and total failure.
Yes, sir.
When those cows were on XPC, it shifted that whole spectrum to adequate, right? That's pretty amazing just by this, this Diamond V XPC supplement. But that's the power of gut health and digestibility. I mean, it really drives everything from a production standpoint.
I mean, in today's market, if you can get better immune health from those calves whenever they're first born, it's going to, if you don't lose as many, obviously that's going to increase. But then if they're healthy from day one, they're going to gain better throughout their entire life. And then you're going to get more pounds. And then
Right.
if you are a producer that's maybe retaining ownership, you get them to the feeder, they're going to gain better there too.
Yeah,
So I like that. We've talked about some of the other products in that tub and having it out, 60 days before they calve and then through calving and through their breeding season. I think that's what we were kind of aiming with that tub. And I think we're really, really hitting it right there on the head.
Yeah, I think if a producer's wanting to be strategic with their dollars, there's just no better time in that cow's production cycle to spend a few pennies to ensure, for that insurance policy, no doubt.
So to finish, Zeb, if you could leave us with one message for each product for these sales reps to pass on to producers, what would it be?
I think in the most simplest sense, the XPC is gut health and feed digestibility, colostrum quality at calving time, right?
Yes,
Those
sir.
3 bullet points, right? Gut health, feed digestibility, colostrum quality. With Nature Safe, if you're dealing with I'm not even going to say just high risk cattle, but if you are dealing with incoming new cattle, there is stress in that by itself. And Nature Safe primes that innate immune system and helps drive feed intake to where animals are better able to overcome those health challenges. And we know that we can eliminate the challenges. So Nature Safe is as good of insurance policy as it exists in the industry, right? Those would be my 30-second elevator pitch as to why
Yes,
those
sir.
products fit well in producers' operations.
Perfect. Zeb, we really appreciate you coming on, talking to us about these 2 products, the Nature Safe and then the XPC. Our guys, if you ever have any questions, you can give me a call. And if you want Zeb's number, I can pass it right along. So thank you all for listening and good luck out there.